Okay, this is day 4 of London Craft Week. Hello, welcome, thank you for joining us. Today we are with leatherworker Rosanna Clare, who actually, we just found out a minute ago, well, we remembered, was the first maker to join us at Vigour and Skills and the first studio visit we ever did. And I've just heard about a disastrous interview that took place when we were trying to film all the makers and getting to hear their stories. And I think it's probably, this is probably better timing for it, London Craft Week.
Yeah.
So Rosanna, with further ado, would you like to tell us a bit about your story?
Yes, so I'm Rosanna Clare. It's my business name. Rosanna Gethin is my full name. I started working with leather just after I graduated in graphic design. I realised graphic design wasn't really my calling, but I finished the course and then I was a bit lost after I graduated, and then just happened to be walking around Spitalfields Market in London, and there were a lot of fashion graduates with some lovely things they were selling, and some quite nice leather work. And I just thought, oh, that looks really fun. And then I looked at the prices and thought, a bit expensive. But then I came across a chap on another row in the same market actually selling pieces of leather that didn't seem that expensive. So I thought, well, I'll have a go. And that was it, really. That got me going. And I just started making bags. And my mum's a very good seamstress, so I borrowed one of her sewing machines, and then just started playing around. And it just became a hobby, really, and it just sort of became more and more of an obsession over the years. And but in the meantime, I trained to be a teacher, so I taught design and technology, and so I was teaching secondary school. So I was teaching a bit of textiles, a bit of woodwork, a bit of lots of different things, but very practical, using the hands, keeping the leather work as a sort of hobby on the side, but always sort of continuing that and eventually making things for people. And more people were saying, oh, you should do this. And yeah, just over the years it became more and more something I could see I was improving at, and did a few weekend courses, and then 10 years later, I suppose it was, that I finally gave up the teaching and started the business, so which was nearly 7 years ago now.
Wow, so that is actually quite a nice, Because I guess my next question was having your own brand ever part of the plan? And that really answered that. It sort of evolved on its own, didn't it?
It did, and I mean, after I was teaching for about 5 years, and I took a year out, actually. I took a year out and did a master's at Chelsea Art College in textiles, which was a very sort of broad course. It was the ethos is all about sustainability and recycling. So I was looking at, because I already had an interest in leather, obviously, I was looking at leather waste, and I happened to sort of use a bit of wood as well. And so part of my practice for my course was coming up with something using these materials. And it didn't have to be your sort of traditional textile item. A lot of people, like one girl was making things out of Metro newspapers off the tube, because we get so many of those, and she knitted it. I don't know how she did it, but she knitted it into garments, and it was also all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And I actually made a set of coffee tables as my final piece, but inlaid with bit strips of leather that I put together. And so it was a bit different, but it just gave me that sort of, I think from teaching and just getting into the monotony of doing the same thing, I missed that craft, that my own self-worth of experimenting and doing something for myself. So it reignited that, and then that's where after that I definitely needed to do my own thing. I carried on teaching for a bit, but I knew that I wanted to do more with leather. I think by then I decided eventually I wanted to have my own brand, but I wasn't quite sure what that was going to be.
When you started your own brand, did you have any kind of sort of strict policies, or all your leather is recycled, isn't it?
It's not all of it.
Not all of it.
I think a lot of it was, again, the word organic can be overused, but because when I started, I was a graduate, I was doing temping, and I was living in London. Didn't have much money, and I would go into charity shops and I would take old bags, that were being sold, and I would take them apart and reuse the hardware, because I realised that even metal zips are quite expensive, and I could buy one for a couple of quid in a charity shop, take it apart and reuse them, and actually save money. But obviously it's a bit of time, but in the process of taking it apart, I was learning how the bags were made. And then I was starting to looking at leather jackets and in charity shops as well, and like, well, there's actually quite a big panel there, I could use that. And that sort of evolved that way. And then and obviously leather sofas, people would be getting rid of old sofas that they just didn't like it anymore. There's nothing wrong with the leather, it might be a bit worn in places, but quite a lot of leather to reuse. So it was more, in a way, at the beginning, it was out of necessity and just saving money. And then eventually it was like, well, actually, this is better for the environment. We all like, it's become fashionable to recycle as well, which is obviously better for the planet. But yeah, so that's how that started. And then more and more, I'm like thinking, well, maybe I should be using, that could be my next thing, is like not using any new leather. Because at the moment I do buy some new leather. I get quite a lot of offcuts from industry, as well as, reusing jackets and sofas and things. I get people giving me their old sofas quite often, which is why I run out of space in my studio. But yeah, I think it started as a sort of, say necessity, but that's become more of my kind of, my brand, if you like, my ethos. And yeah, I think moving forward, it's something I want to try and, use less and less new leather, and where I can try and have it's either sort of left over from industry, or it's come to me, it's like second hand, so it's not technically new, and try and move away from any new leather at all. That's ideally what I'd like to do.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You're definitely on the way. Because I definitely want you to tell us a bit about these pieces here. I'm sure there's stories here. But before we get into that, I just wanted to ask, your creative process as far as a designer, handbag, wallets and everything, has that changed over the years since you started, or?
Yes, I'd say it has. I mean, again, with learning new techniques, and as I say, I'm mostly self-taught. I've done a couple of weekend courses, but that's about it. A lot of it is from just experimenting myself, but also, YouTube is great for learning things as well, and video tutorials and things like that. So I think as my skills have got better and improving in that way, I think I've been more adventurous in what I think I can do, but a lot of it's down to the materials that I have. Like I say, if I get given this sofa, I'm like, oh, what can I do with this? So sometimes it's down to that. I really like using geometric shapes, like my logo is very geometric, it's like a geometric rose, and I just love anything with Art Deco type designs and shapes, which they inform a lot of my designs. But yeah, they're never really that sort of, I think because, as I say, I'm self-taught, a lot of my designs stem from a sort of fairly straightforward shape. Like, they're never too complicated in their sort of geometry, in the structure, if you like, but I try and keep them fairly simple, but with things like, so for example, this I've used some laser engraving.
I love that, yeah.
And again, a lot of that comes from my teaching, because we used to use laser cutters for a lot of the school projects, and I would experiment with that. So I've got my own laser engraver, so I often use that to sort of try different things out. These ones, are, again, this is sort of patched pieces together. That's, again, based on what I have, because, I can get lots of little scraps. This was actually a jacket, so there were lots of bits that were awkward shapes, but I thought if I make them all the same, then it looks more intentional and not, like those old-fashioned sort of leather bags you'd get, where you get all these sort of funny shapes sewn together, and they're very kind of old-fashioned. Yeah. But that's the sort of thing behind those. Same with the sort of triangle ones here. So it's just using different techniques to basically use what I've got in the awkward shapes that they come in.
You've got a very big range of pieces. Yes. Some leatherworkers stick to they just make 2 or 3 pieces, and some make lots. You've got a huge range. You could fill a shop with just
and that's
Rosanna Clare's pieces.
Yes, and I wonder sometimes if I've got too many things. I think maybe I should refine it down. But a lot of people say to me, "No, you can tell it's all yours. It's all come from you. It's not. They're not too, too crazily different ends of the spectrum." But there's definitely times when I think, okay, maybe that's not selling, or I'm just not, feeling that anymore. I'll concentrate on these. But yeah, I do like to experiment and try different things. I think you can get very bogged down if you're, just got a few different things that you do. and that's what I love about the variety of what I do is you know, I have a lot of people come to me with things that they want upcycled, so jackets into bags where it's, you know, a family member has died and they've got their jacket and they don't want to get rid of it, but they're not going to wear it. Can I turn it into a bag for them? And that's actually one of my favourite things to do, because it's got that sentimental attachment, it's saving it from landfill, and you're given something that's already got these patterns and shapes, and you work with that to come up with something you would never come up with if it was a blank piece of material. So each one is totally unique. So I really love those kind of projects.
It's lovely. It's the real sort of it's the real meaning behind repurposing. I think
Yeah.
that's, you know,
Yeah.
without all the fashion jargon, that's what we're all trying to sort of get out of it. And that's wonderful that you can find use of things, especially things that mean something for someone.
Yes.
Going through, based on that and based on the fact that we talked about this huge range of these very big ranges, how would you describe your style, Rosanna Clare? When people say to you, how would you describe your personal style?
I'd say it's kind of contemporary. Yeah, I mean, some of the things I make are quite traditional, but I'd like to think they have a bit of a modern twist. But it's tricky because, you know, as a maker and running around business, and you know, you're trying to obviously there's people out there that you want to buy your stuff, so you want, you know, there's trends that you kind of have to sort of keep up with, but then, you know, you don't want to just follow the trends. So it's finding that balance of items that will sell, but things that, you know, are true to your own sort of design ethic, if you like. But yeah, I'd say a lot of my bags are quite modern. I mean, my ideal customer, or my true customers, is usually, I've kind of worked out, sort of 40 to 50-year-old woman of a sort of middle class sort of thing, but who likes something a bit different. But also like something quite traditional. So I don't know. I'd like to say contemporary, as I say, like Art Deco influenced, but with that kind of slightly traditional as well.
Yeah, easy to use. Yeah, easy to use.
It's a sort of mixture of everything.
So adaptable, though. I find them incredibly adaptable.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of day to evening wear, and you know, for a smart occasion, they're just really functional pieces. I feel like with everything that comes out of your collections.
Yeah, I don't tend to make little, you know, fiddly clutch bag. Just also because they're very fiddly and tricky to do, and the smaller your item is, the less tolerance of, you know, of area you have. And yeah, I quite like the sort of softer leather stuff, you know, and things that you can travel with a bit more easily. And I find actually, because I do quite a lot of repairs, I get people bringing me sort of designer things that have broken, and it's quite frustrating because they've spent thousands sometimes on these items, and they've broken when they shouldn't have. It's not just wear and tear, it's a design fault, or, you know, and I'm just like, that shouldn't happen. And, you know, there are all these very sort of stiff and structured things, and I don't know, I think if it's softer, it's less likely, depending on the design, but less likely to break. And if you're using quite heavy components, you know, before you even put anything in the bag, it weighs a ton. And again, I've used bags where, you know, like I say, before you put anything in them, they weigh too much, so it's just not practical.
Where do you get your inspiration though for? I'm talking now handbags, because when I think of your collections, I do think of your handbags, because you have got these very strong styles.
Yeah.
It's not just one type of handbag. Where do you get your inspiration from? Is it?
Quite well. Yeah, it depends really. I wouldn't say I have sort of collections at different times of the year, like, you know, you would have in a sort of high street store, but often, as I said before, it could be someone's bringing me some things that I wasn't expecting, and I think, what can I do with this? I was given a load of fastenings recently. A lady's mother died who used to be a bag maker, and she sent me all these fastenings, and a lot of them I've never used before, and some of them I don't even know what they're used for, but there was definitely some pieces like, oh, this is interesting, like clasps for putting on the straps, you know, that you just squash them together and that's it, that will hold it, so I was looking into using those. It can be, I mean, I will look on things like Pinterest and, you know, what's fashionable like at the moment. The camera bag, you know, with the strap that you can change with obviously stripes or leopard print, you know, that are everywhere. I think, well, because I run classes and I teach workshops for making bags, I thought, well, if that's fashionable at the moment, maybe that can be another bag project course to run, and people can make their own interesting straps to go with their bag. But yeah, it can be seeing, even just on the tube, seeing someone with an interesting looking bag, and I like that element there. But it's also been careful not to copy. Obviously, people are influenced by different things all the time, and we all look online, and they say fashion goes around in cycles. But it's making sure you're coming up with something a little bit different, but it's still going to sell at the end of the day. So yeah, it really depends time of year. I mean, sometimes I get people asking about vegan bags, non-leather items. So I looked into using something called Pinatex, which is it's actually made out of pineapple leaves. Yeah, it's so weird. It's actually quite a strange texture. It doesn't feel anything like leather, but it's been used actually. A few people I follow, leather workers that I follow, they're starting to use it as well as an alternative to leather. And there's other things that are coming out quite a lot all the time. But I think because of what I do, where I'm reusing discarded or unused offcuts, I think that's another way of trying to be more sustainable that not a lot of people are doing. But yeah, looking at these alternatives as well. So I created a vegan bag course where it's using just cotton and actually vinyl and cotton for the straps, so there's no leather elements to it whatsoever. But I find, if people are looking up a bag course and they come across a leather course like I offer, they're not expecting me to probably offer them a vegan course, So, but yeah, it's just making sure I'm keeping up to date with what's around and what other people are doing, and
what you want to do.
And exactly what I want to do. But trying to keep that balance between all the above.
I've known your collections, and I know how you work with repurposing leather and or your, a lot of the pieces are sort of recycled, but I've heard more now actually I'm fascinated by this, people coming to you with, the relative who's passed away's jacket or the sofa they're getting rid of because they broke, moving house or whatever. I love this idea that there's such a human journey, but through that, what is the weirdest thing you've been asked to make? Because there must be some weird stuff.
Yeah, I've made some strange things. Well, at the beginning of lockdown, right at the beginning of the pandemic, this lady got in touch. It was a very strange email. She said, "This is probably the weirdest thing you've..." And she was a PA for quite a well-known boxer. She wouldn't mention names because he was so well-known. And she got my name through a friend who'd done a course with me, and he wanted to have a mask made with a certain high, I shouldn't really say their name, but a high branded, monogrammed designer label, should we say.
Okay, well, there's a few crossing. I know.
And so, I mean, I never posted it on Instagram. No. And it was right at the beginning of the pandemic, so everything, all my courses had stopped, everything, so I thought, oh gosh. And I did do quite a lot of things in the pandemic when, things I'd been putting off, like redoing my website and admin stuff that I needed to do. So it was quite good in that respect, but I wasn't getting many, obviously workshops or anything. So yeah, I thought, okay, I can do this. And anyway, the PA sent me a bag by this designer, which was secondhand, but still, a lot of money, this thing. And it was genuine because I checked, and cutting it up just felt so wrong. But yeah, I made this mask out of this fabric, and it didn't seem at all hygienic. It was like plastic material. But he loved it, and then I made another one for his wife.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, so it was very strange, but that was probably the oddest thing I've made. One of the most challenging, I'd say, was one of the first biggest commissions I got when I started the business. This chap contacted me, and his son was a gardener in London. And he didn't drive, but he needed to carry around his tools because obviously a lot of the gardens he didn't have the tools he needed. So I basically had to make a massive version of a tool roll with spades and forks and things like that for gardening. So it was huge. I think it was a metre, no, not quite, 1.20 meters, something like that, square in canvas, like heavy duty sort of tarpaulin canvas, then pockets, leather pockets with straps to hold the tools in different places, so it could then roll together. So it folded into three, so it was like a leaf, you know, a 3-ply leaflet, if you like. And then he then had to have straps on the other side to be able to carry it like a rucksack. And the whole
really
thing had to
sweet,
be
actually.
trimmed in leather. And he'd made this sort of cardboard prototype of this thing. So when I went to see him, I was like, wow, you know, he knew what he wanted. But again, I was quite new to it. You know, I'd never made anything like this before or since. So coming up with a quote was quite tricky. And then after I started it, I was like, oh, this is not enough. This is not enough. So I had to go back to him and say, it's going to be a bit more. Anyway, I eventually made this thing and delivered it to him. And he was very happy with it. But it was a Christmas present for his son. So I didn't know whether or not it was the right thing or not. And I did actually message him, I think, on Christmas Day. He's like, did he like it? Was it okay? Thinking, actually, do I want to know if he does it?
Oh my gosh.
It was a nightmare to make. But he said, yes, no, he loves it. Only thing is, I've left off an important pocket. We might have to come back to you to put it on. And I was like, I never want to see that thing ever again.
When you're finished with something, are you sort of done? Are you like, that's it, the job is done?
Well, it was just so hard to work with because it's this huge piece and I had to sew a lot of the pockets on the sewing machine. So if you can imagine this big bulky thing with pockets that I had to manoeuvre around the machine, it was just really hard work. So yeah, I was quite pleased to see the back of it. But I was really proud of it. Got my dad to model it and put it on. He's a bit of a gardener.
Showroom model,
So,
yeah.
can you make me one? Like, no. But yeah,
sweet.
that's probably the most challenging and most unusual thing I think I've made.
And what is, just in contrast, what's your favourite piece to make? What's the piece that you make and go?
I think my most favourite thing, I think, is probably, as I mentioned earlier, that the upcycling of a jacket, you know, of something that belonged to someone that was, you know, has sentimental value. They give me the most sort of satisfaction, especially, you know, when the owner sees it again, it's like, you know, amazed and loves it, hopefully, mostly. But I think coming up with a new idea, new design, and it comes out better than I'd hoped, that's always satisfying. And I think sometimes I worry that one day I'm just going to wake up and go, I don't want to make bags anymore.
Oh no,
But
not yet, please.
No, I still get a thrill out of it. And even, you know, the courses that I run, the several courses that are the most popular where I've done the same bag over and over again, you know, just different colours or whatever. And I never get bored of that. The look on the student's face, like, oh wow, when they turn it all through and it's like, you know, nearly finished and they're really chuffed that they've done it themselves, and that sort of sense of satisfaction for them is really lovely to see, and I never get bored of that. So that I really enjoy. But
we must cover before we
Yeah.
finish, because obviously you are here as one of, you know, our amazing makers, and we love your stuff. But you are not a one-trick pony. There's a few other things you have up your sleeve, and another
Yes.
thing that is something that you've got books out.
I've got a book.
How
Yes.
did that happen? I mean, they're amazing. I mean, it's just no small thing to
Yeah.
sort of make a book. I mean,
It's so now that's been out since May 2018, so 4 years now.
I mean, it's incredible. It's a real sort of how teaching people
Yeah,
how to
so
sort
it's
of make.
got 20 projects in there, from hand stitching to machining, and the idea is you can do them on a domestic machine with the right leather needle. But yes, I was actually approached by the publishers about that, and I think because I'd only been doing the business for a year and a half, I suppose, 2 years. And because I'm not technically, you know, trained, I had a bit of imposter syndrome. I thought, you know, I can't write a book. What am I thinking? And actually doing it and writing it, I was like, actually, I do know quite a lot. I've learned quite a lot over the years, and it's actually deciding how, you know, which projects not to put in it that, you know, was quite hard. So it was a lot of work, but it's validated myself, and I think given me kudos a bit, and also
Absolutely.
confidence that, you know, I know what.
It's a brilliant thing to give someone to sort of. I'm actually looking at myself, not that I'm about to start crying, thinking, gosh, maybe I could do this. You know what I mean? It really takes away the intimidation of like it all. And then after that, you have been known to be on TV a fair amount. How did that happen? Because
so I've done a show called Money for Nothing, which is again all about upcycling. It's a daytime TV show, so not a lot of people have heard of it, but it's gaining popularity, and I got onto it because, well, I initially I saw it on TV and I thought, oh, this looks, maybe I could be on there. I upcycle stuff. And then I heard my upholsterer neighbour where I work, so he's a furniture upholsterer, he had been working with a woman who'd been on the show. And then I did Top Drawer trade show, and I was opposite a chap. And so trade shows, I don't know that they can be quite boring when you're just waiting for buyers to come around. It's 3 or 4 days. And I recognised one of his pieces of work. I was like, off the show, and I said to him, have you done money for nothing? And he's like, yes. So I just quizzed him about it, and so I applied, and that was it, really.
Because you are known amongst our other makers as like, oh yeah, we know Rosanna Clare, money for nothing.
So really?
We've had a few mention that. Right. So yes, a bit of a TV name. That's brilliant. Well, I mean, there's no stone unturned really for you, is there? What's next? Is there a what's next? You don't have to tell us.
Yeah, well, I'd like to do. I would love to do a book, because there is a project in there about upcycling a jacket into a bag, and I would love to do a book all about upcycling leather into different things. There's a chap called Max McMurdo. I don't know if you've heard of him. He does upcycles a lot of things. He basically lives in a converted container on a river, and he's been quite involved in doing all sorts of upcycling, and he's done a book. And I'd love to do one for leather or upcycling materials into accessories and bags. So that would be amazing. But also looking forward to trying to reduce my use of new leather to almost zero in the next sort of 2 years if I can.
You'll get there. Yeah. You'll get there. We've had a lot of very inspirational stories over the last few days, and something we've taken is that it takes time and it's a lot of work, but you all seem to get there, which is very impressive. Thank you so much for being part of Day 4 of London Craft Week. That's been a lovely end to the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.